Donald Trump hits the jackpot. At 44, he has inaugurated the Trump Taj Mahal, his mega casino complex in Atlantic City. He's striding triumphantly between the gamblers who greet him warmly. But his triumph was elusive. In reality, the Trump empire is bankrupt. Between megalomania, downfall, and the urge for revenge, it's at this moment that Donald Trump's trajectory takes shape.
I thought if he ran, he would win. And that it was clear that he was the combination of celebrity personality and populist message that a lot of people had been trying to put together for a long time. And he was sort of a natural next step from Obama. The frenzy, the fervor around the Obama campaign, it was driven by a lot of the same kind of desire to send a message to Washington.
In Queens, you have to pinch yourself to remember you're in New York, a short hop from Manhattan. It could be anywhere else in the United States, any quiet neighborhood where folk live out the American dream. The property developer Fred Trump built a fine family home here. But he didn't spend much time here since he was always at work. His life plan was simple: marry Marianne MacLeod, a young Scottish girl from a modest background, then earn as much money as possible to set a good example for his kids. Little Donald is the second son. It was a Presbyterian upbringing, built on prayer and sermons that served to hammer home the message of conformism, where capitalism is taken as gospel truth and financial success is met with a benediction of the Lord.
The minister was a guy named Norman Vincent Peale, who wrote a book called The Power of Positive Thinking. In the words of the author, imprint on your mind an image of yourself as successful, never let it go. Never let the idea of failure get into your mind. Keep this notion of yourself as successful. If something isn't working out, blame it on somebody else.
The whole family lived on the father's terms. Business was good for Fred Trump, who built housing all over Queens for demobilized soldiers. Little Donald wanted to win Fred's approval. He did, however, heed his father's advice. Attack instead of defend, and if you're struck, strike back even harder. By the age of 13, he'd become unbearable, so he was sent away to military school.
His father suddenly removed him from his community and sent him off to boarding school, a military boarding school. And that separation from his family, from his friends, from his neighborhood, from the things he knew, was highly traumatic for Donald Trump.
It was a garbage dump for dunces and disturbed rich kids, put in the hands of disciplinarians who made them don a uniform and a set of powerful virile convictions. Some tried to survive by playing on the weaknesses in the system.
Military schools for young men always had the reputation of being essentially prisons, reform schools. In military school, it's largely run by adolescent boys. And in my experience, there's nothing crueler than to be run by adolescent boys. So he had to learn to become a big bully. And this is part of the military school training.
The school set out to control students through intensive sport training. It was at the heart of this model that the teenage Donald would spot the weak link.
Donald told me about a lot of horrors that went on, about hazing and so forth. And the worst horror was this man, Theodore Tobias. It just was, he said he was a monster. I did find him a monster. On the one hand, there were some boys he liked very much, and others he didn't. I remember that Major Tobias, he would come in just like he was one of the boys and take a shower with us. And there was something kind of perverse about that, too. And so I believe Donald learned how to manipulate Tobias to get his own way. And I think that's the beginning of the Donald Trump that we know. Fred Trump told him that you have to be a king and a killer. that was Tobias's feeling entirely also. And I think Donald did understand how to read Tobias and consequently began to think he'd learned how to read his father this way. Donald's first emancipation from his father was when he conquered Tobias and when essentially conquering his father. He said, I've done this now. And then he went on and had a very good success in military school.
His parents were reassured. American values and those of his father had been drilled into Donald.
It was only through the discipline and the rituals of the military school that he came to find a new place for himself. He became a leader of one of the student groups. He became someone who would bully other kids as a way of showing that he was in charge, he was the boss, that he had a high rank among the students. And he won, through that military school experience, a sense of himself as a leader in a military environment.
Trump Village in Coney Island was Fred Trump's crowning glory, a complex of 7 vast housing blocks built in the 60s. This provided Donald with his first experience in real estate alongside his father.
Donald worked for Fred Trump every summer, saw what his father did, saw his father's own business practices of pushing everything to the limit, always at work, always looking for the way to make something that was profitable even more profitable.
Donald's ascension alongside his father was the result of one of those tragedies that families would rather remain hidden. That of Fred Jr., his elder brother, a handsome and sensitive man, quite out of step with the arrogant despotism of his father. Some parents murder their children because they are not sufficiently like them. Come on, make way for Donald, who's like me, only worse, and so much the better.
Fred was about 40 when he died from alcohol abuse and was really, had a terrible downward trajectory of his life. At the time he died, he was a groundskeeper, a very low paid job, and not the job that the son of the president of an organization would be expected to have. Donald does express occasionally some regrets, some compassion about his brother Fred, sometimes attributes his not drinking to seeing what his brother did, and his not smoking cigarettes to seeing his brother as a chain smoker.
The best way to stand up to Daddy Trump was to escape his grip. At 25, Donald had seen enough of Queens. He set his sights on Manhattan, which Fred distrusted for the same reasons which attracted Donald. That was where the power, wealth, and fame was. For an ambitious young man like Donald, this was the kind of city for him. He borrowed $1 million from his father and set out to conquer Manhattan. The challenge was all the more exciting, given that New York was virtually bankrupt at the time.
At that time, no one was making any investments in New York City. We were losing population. There was a great increase in welfare, a tremendous increase in crime. People were afraid to walk the streets. And probably during those 4 to 5 years or 6 years, we must have lost about 40 or 50 headquarters companies, which were the heart of what New York City corporate business was all about. And what impressed me the most about Donald was willingness to invest time and money into an area that everybody else was trying to leave. He was very young. I believe he was in his early 20s at that time. He was full of confidence. He had a brash way about him.
Scouting for opportunities in Manhattan, Donald spotted the Commodore, a vast yet run-down hotel. But to buy it and finance the renovations, he would need a huge tax break from the city of New York.
It was an obsolete hotel, and it was just about ready to shut down. He walked into my office and started showing me pictures of the Commodore Hotel and what he wanted to do. And that real estate tax abatement was necessary for the feasibility of the project. So all of the other developers and all of the other financial people thought that he was making a big mistake, and they attributed that to his lack of experience.
Enter Roy Cohn, a fearsome attorney who would take care of anyone who stood in Donald's way. A former chief counsel of Senator McCarthy in the communist witch hunts, he had played a prominent role in sending spies Julius and Ethel Rosenberg to the electric chair.
As far as this committee is concerned, sir, I would say if we could continue the way we were before, exposing these communists, these traitors, getting them out of defense plants, getting them out of positions in the Army and other places.
Roy Cohn was the darkest figure in American politics. The whole McCarthy era in the 1950s was a stain on America. He later became a person who was just downright evil. He had this real charm, and then behind the scenes, he could threaten anybody. Or he would tell you, you know, you should really watch yourself.
What better than a gay attorney, always flanked by his athletic blonde companions, to dutifully serve the handsome ladies' man who wanted to take Manhattan by storm?
Went to his townhouse, you would see young men shirtless roaming around the lobby of the townhouse. His bed had a teddy bear in it, and I would just shrug when I went there.
The pact between Donald and Roy goes back a long way, to the time when the attorney got Fred Trump and his son out of a messy affair involving a refusal to sell to blacks. He won the legal case against the administration that was suing them.
Roy Cohn, who Donald has called his second father, taught him always go on the attack against law enforcement, never concede any point, make them look like the bad guys.
With his talent, self-confidence, and suave charm, Roy Cohn also defended hardened mobsters who would later pay him back in kind.
The fact that Donald has been strangers with the truth is a Roy Cohn tactic. They will always throw something against the wall in an effort to make it stick. Donald will say one thing one day, one thing another. Even if it's contradictory, it doesn't matter. It changes direction, and it's too late to catch up at the end of the day because he's already gone on to 15 more subjects. That's exactly what Roy Cohn used to do.
41 years without paying taxes, a tax break of $110 million. Buying the Commodore and renovating it was the deal of the century. Roy Cohn did a good job, but the name above the door had to go to his associates, the Hyatt Group.
It's been a long, hard fight. How do you feel?
The combination of Hyatt and the new hotel, which is going to be spectacular, something that New York has never seen, with elevators on the outside and atriums and the largest ballroom in the city. We feel all of these are going to combine with really potentially the best area in New York City, and probably New York City's most important area, the Grand Central area. All of this is going to combine to make probably the most successful hotel, one of them in the country, we feel.
The inauguration ceremony was his first contact with the new mayor of New York, Ed Koch, a tough character who was not happy about the tax deduction granted by his predecessor and who was preparing himself for the next encounter.
Maybe. Hopefully we'll show them together, Donald. Okay?
With the success of the Commodore deal, Donald Trump burst onto center stage of big business in Manhattan.
Where did you get the incentive?
Well, I don't look at, really in my case, necessarily incentive. I enjoy what I'm doing. I really enjoy what I'm doing. I look at it as being somewhat creative. I think I thrive on what I do. I enjoy what I do. I like what I do. And it's not that I'm looking for anything, I just enjoy it. When I get up in the morning, I'm excited about the day.
Who would you call if you were in trouble?
Maybe I'll call you, Rana. You know, I mean, you're such a nice woman and you look like you know your way around, certainly, so maybe I'd give you a little buzz.
Ivana Zelnikova, a former Czech ski champion, had come a long way before ending up in Manhattan. As for Donald, he wasn't chic enough to attract one of the snobbish Park Avenue heiresses. In short, it was a marriage of convenience, in which the love was mainly for dollars between a couple who shared the same ambition and who relished the pleasure of shocking the truly wealthy by taking as much money off of them as possible.
She was always out to please him, and, you know, he gave her a hard time, and she took it, but he also trusted her a lot, and he put her in a lot of different positions over time. He really gave her a lot of responsibility, and she also didn't take any guff from anyone.
From her communist past, Ivana retained the reflexes of faceless bureaucracy. She knew how to leave bills unpaid.
Wonderful. Donald is just a wonderful human being. He's giving and he's warm, and a lot of people, they look at him as a tough businessman, which he is. But Donald is, if you're good to him, he's good to you. If you're not good to him, you're dead, because sooner or later he outsmarts you somewhere.
You liked the Commodore after its Donald Trump makeover? You're going to love Trump Tower at the heart of Manhattan's Midtown business district. And this time, there's no question of getting the wrong address. Donald's name is on the front of the building.
The finest piece of real estate, considered to be the finest piece of real estate in the world, is at the corner of 5th Avenue and 57th Street. That's the Tiffany corner of the world. We're now building a 68-story tower at 5th Avenue and 57th Street, which is going to be, I believe, the most spectacular building of its kind in the world. Nobody believed it would be possible to build that kind of a building in that location, because nobody ever assumed that that location could possibly be purchased. But all of a sudden it was.
For Donald, Trump Tower was the mother of all future battles. And his radical decision to hire a woman engineer to steer the project proved to be a shrewd one.
I think Donald loved the fact that he hired a woman to be in charge of Trump Tower, because as soon as he did it, he put out the word that he, Donald Trump, was the first one to ever hire a woman to build a major skyscraper. He loved the fact that I was challenging. He loved the fact that I was a little 5'3" nothing, and I would go toe-to-toe with these big, burly guys, and I had no fear or anything like that, and that's what he likes in people. He loved that. Well, I wasn't a killer, but I didn't take any crap from anybody. I stood up to everyone, whether it was Donald, who I stood up to millions of times, or some guy in the field, a plumber or an electrician. He could be extremely mean. He had a crew on that worked for him, and he treated them terribly. He embarrassed them in front of us, and he sensed weakness, and he exploited it. I was not going to work for somebody who would badmouth me and lambaste me and embarrass me in front of other people. But because of my nature, he never did that. Donald and I were very close on Trump Tower, very close. He was like a mentor to me, almost like a big brother. And of course, I held my own because he knew nothing at all about construction, zero. And I did all that. And we had some beautiful fights, really. He accused me of something terrible, which is wrong. And you know, people say Trump never ever says he's sorry. Well, he said he was sorry to me. And that is probably one of the few times he ever apologized to anybody.
One of the main motivations for future buyers was not the view over Central Park. It was the astronomical price tag per square foot. Donald made that his central sales pitch. And the higher it was, the better, as long as you counted like Donald.
And the idea of having an apartment on 30 is more attractive than having an apartment on 20. And anyone that knows condo sales or has ever tried to buy an apartment knows that the same apartment a floor above is more money. So that was his notion, that he would increase the lure or the allure of an apartment by putting it 10 floors higher. If you cheat, you're going to win. It's simple as that. If you take markers and you put them somewhere else and no one sees you doing it, oh, here I am, bop, 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 I win, you know? And he did. He cheated a lot. He didn't follow the rules, and he went around things.
Ed Koch and his full staff honored the inauguration with their presence. Fred Trump, who Barbara Rez nearly threw out of a window in exasperation at his interventions, was very proud of his son.
Excellent, fantastic, unbelievable.
The
mayor has created such a tremendous atmosphere with respect to the city of New York that Europeans, people from all over the world, it's become the #1 city in the world. And I say a large part of that is due to the tremendous abilities of Mayor Koch. I think he's done a tremendous job.
You know, there's nothing wrong with being rich. I wish more people were wealthy and could afford to move into this co-op.
It never hurts, Mr. Mayor, does it?
Right. By the way, he is a chip off the old block. This is
my father, Fred.
Right, who has done a remarkable job.
Indeed, but everyone got the picture. There was now only one Trump that counted in the family business. At 38, Donald Trump joined the pantheon of captains of industry, whose legendary status was cultivated by capitalism.
He's an American phenomenon who's had, I would say, a more profound effect on this city and changing its face and changing its image than any other person.
And Donald had a new project, a former industrial site covering 14 hectares where he dreamed of building an entire complex. But he would, of course, have to go through Ed Koch for another tax break and a whole host of construction permits.
This is going to be the great. Once you get, there's nothing to compete with it. Literally, there's nothing to compete with it. And that's not a big span when you look at that right of way.
The mayor had put these formalities in the hands of his deputy, Ruth Messinger, who was likable but inflexible.
I was regularly saying, if you want a tax abatement so somebody will build some low-cost housing in the Bronx, of course. You know, it will be a while before they build. It will be a while before the money comes in. And we need that kind of housing. But to give a tax abatement for a major office building or hotel always seems foolish to me. I do remember him trying to be charming. I didn't like his charm.
Maybe I should explain you what we actually changed since last time.
That's correct.
I mean, essentially, as you see that the buildings stayed unchanged, you know, the apartment buildings. And
it was clearly in the interest of the city of New York that the project should go ahead, but not on the terms Trump demanded.
And we'll see how it all comes out.
Okay.
Especially since he just announced out of nowhere that the development was to include the construction of the world's tallest tower.
And almost always his message was, like, you're so lucky, I'm going to build the tallest building in the world right here. Now, nobody, I want to say, it didn't matter your politics, it didn't matter your attitude toward New York, nobody wanted the tallest building in the world. And he was furious because he doesn't like people disagreeing with him, which is pretty clear today.
One solution to get around the obstacle was palling up with Koch himself. Ivana was sent on a charm offensive, but Koch turned a deaf ear when it came to the matter of the tower.
Ed Koch bled for the city. He was a common man, a poor man, a man of the people who came up. He knew the basics of running. He told people the truth, and he was out there on the streets where everyone could see him and everyone could touch him. He was a magnet for everyone. For Donald, taking on Koch was a big deal because Koch was the biggest guy in the city. By taking him on, he suddenly becomes equal to Goliath. Koch never liked Donald Trump and never wanted to have any business with him.
The mayor did not give in. His re-election was at stake, and too bad if it triggered a war of words. Like Donald, he was not one to shy away from a fight.
Ed Koch is a man of little talent and little ability, and he's really done a very bad job in New York, and he's got problems with me because I'm the only one that goes around and says it. Everyone else knows it, but they don't go openly and say it.
I have no further comment to make on Donald Trump, and that's the end of it. What else?
I almost feel sorry for the guy. He's got problems.
First volley coming from Donald Trump. How can our idiot mayor go to Nicaragua when he can't even run New York City? The return volley from Koch. In this day and age, one does not use terms like idiot and moron to be vituperative.
In the end, it was yes to the tax abatement, since this had become the norm since the Commodore, but it was a firm no to the tower, which never got further than the architect's model.
It's a solid development that added a great many units of housing to the city. As you know, the people who live there now are taking his name off the buildings, which says something about how they feel. But he did a lot of building. I mean, nobody would cheat him out of that.
Trump was seeking an opportunity to patch things up with the mayor. And it so happened that Koch was bogged down in a problem that city bureaucracy was preventing him from resolving: the Central Park ice rink.
I can tell you, if it weren't for Ed Koch and Henry Stern, we wouldn't be standing here today. So I'd like to introduce our great mayor, Ed Koch.
Thank you. You just saw the modest Donald Trump.
The ice rink had been closed for a very long time, and the project to restore it had not made an inch of progress in 13 years. Officials, unionists, and creditors were all at odds over it. Using his strong-arm methods, Trump was able to get things moving again, while Koch turned a blind eye, and in 4 months, the rink was open for business. All was right with the world. The inauguration of the new rink was a great moment of political hypocrisy for a wide-eyed New York.
The mayor's responsible when something is not moving well, and Trump basically came and said, I will come in and fix it, and he did. That was probably one of the cleverest things he did, one of the most effective, and it's probably one of the things that made Koch furious.
Trump's office window looked out not only on the ice rink, but also on the Plaza Hotel, a sort of Renaissance chateau on Central Park. Trump overpaid for the plaza, but this luxury midtown hotel was the ideal plaything for Ivana.
My wife, Ivana, who's the subject. Ivana's running the Plaza Hotel. She's got an ability to manage, and manage with style, and I thought the greatest toy that I could give Ivana would be to put her at the Plaza Hotel.
The Plaza Hotel was the perfect launchpad for a high society career. Even the famous Maria Shriver came to interview the new boss.
He appointed you president of the Plaza, and he said, I'm going to pay my wife $1 a year and all the dresses she can afford. Is that enough compensation? Is that the right kind of compensation?
You're working as a team, and you're working on the same thing. Donald owns it, and I own it. We own it together. I wouldn't ask him for a salary. I'm a traditional girl with European background. The man is the boss in the family.
She cost him money, and she made problems in the field that were not necessary. But, you know, she did make some contributions. She had a hand in the design and also decorations and things like that. So she did play a role, absolutely, and he trusted her.
The publication of The Art of the Deal positioned Trump as the quintessential self-made man for readers who did not look too closely.
In that book, which is told in the first person, he came off as this sort of charming rogue, this kind of bad boy, but with such a flair that you kind of laughed and thought, oh, what a clever guy. When I first interviewed Donald Trump in his office, I was looking for that person, and I didn't find him. And I didn't even find a hint of him. I just found this guy who had no interest in introspection, no interest in history, no interest really in anything except telling me what a good job he'd done.
Next, Trump embarked on a series of extravagant acquisitions. The over-the-top Mar-a-Lago villa in Palm Beach, Florida, 10,000 square meters of apartments with decor that made even Ivana wince. The yacht Trump Princess, acquired from the Saudi billionaire Khashoggi. But Ivana was not keen on cruising, and Trump didn't have sea legs, so the Trump Princess made do with sailing off the shores of Manhattan.
I would say he's the populist millionaire or the proletariat millionaire, and astute enough as a millionaire, as I said, not to apologize because he's a millionaire. That, I think, was key, is that people who have been rich before have always in some way excused themselves or tried to hide it. And here's Trump, he comes out and he says, I'm a millionaire, you can be a millionaire, here are the products I sell.
The acquisition of an airline seemed more of a classic business venture. But the planes were old crates, resulting in frequent breakdowns, and the pilots were unhappy because the in-flight meals with caviar and champagne were not for them.
And his whole focus is simply on getting cash quick and getting out and moving on to the next mark.
Every self-respecting billionaire has his own American football team, so Trump acquired the New Jersey Generals, recruiting a bunch of top-flight players.
You wouldn't, however, be surprised if he came home one day and said, Ivana, I want to run for governor, I want to run for president.
You're never surprised with Donald. You never know what he's up to next. He's full of surprises at all times.
Would you say, no, I don't want that? Or would you say, let's go for it?
I guess I would support my man.
Trump's fortune spilled over to his family, and Roy Cohn was co-opted as the perfect newfound cousin. But amid the New York lifestyle of the time, Cohn contracted AIDS. He denied the evidence and scoffed at his looming demise.
I'll tell you what I will be remembered for most. I will be Roy Cohn dies, was McCarthy's chief aide. No matter what I do, good, bad, indifferent, that's what it's going to be. What would I like it to be? I don't object to that.
Roy Cohn's death was a disaster for Trump, who did not gauge the gravity of its consequences right away. The attorney had protected him from himself. He would no longer have anyone to clean up his mistakes and keep his megalomania in check.
Donald said, "Where's my Roy Cohn?" And Roy Cohn was his protector, and that's what he's always looking for. Someone who could protect him and who could make sure that he gets by the day and doesn't get into trouble.
Having always depended on luck, Trump thought it would follow him to the casinos of Atlantic City. The gambling city on the East Coast was in decline. The historic Marlboro Blenheim Hotel had just been demolished, and the modern hotel casinos were struggling to fill their rooms. All the more reason for Trump to try and turn things around by building a dream casino, or a nightmare one, depending on your point of view. The grand opening of the Trump Taj Mahal Casino was held under a banner reading, "Have a great time." But Trump had heard some worrying noises coming from the banks. Indeed, good luck, Donald. Keep up the showmanship. None of your creditors are ready to follow you in your inevitable downfall.
Bye, Matt. Anyway, thanks so much. Have a good trip.
Bye.
We'll wrap everything up tomorrow. And now, Mike, where are you?
I'm at the real Taj Mahal here in Atlantic City. And as you know, Katie, and today, waiting for me, the great and powerful Oz, Mr. Donald Trump.
Oh,
How are you?
Hi,
Thank you
Katie.
very much. Why name a hotel casino after the Taj Mahal?
Well, you actually said it. This is the real Taj Mahal. I don't know about the one in India, but this is the real thing.
And how's business?
Business has been incredible. Business has really been incredible.
It was the hour of reckoning for the press, which sounded the death knell with headlines declaring Trump was bankrupt. The TV channels got busy crunching the numbers.
It's been only a few months since Donald Trump said he was worth up to $5 billion, but when accountants totaled up the worth of all of his assets, they turned out to be considerably less. The former king of cash may soon be broke.
Trump was in a deep hole. The accountants said his assets were worth only $2.91 billion, leaving him owing about $295 million if he sold everything he owned.
How much is Trump worth in cold cash?
$200 million. Hyatt Hotel at $100 million. The Plaza, perhaps. Trump City, $400 million. Atlantic City Holdings, staff to manage, costs $840 a month. Costs $246,000 a month. $1 million a month.
Staff at the Trump Taj Mahal saw all this as a conspiracy by the rich and powerful against a hero of the common man.
The newspapers don't make the people make the news. And we are the people.
As usual, Trump fell back on his legendary self-belief. There was only one way forward. He continued lying to them and to himself.
The Taj Mahal set a record, an all-time record. Nobody wants to write about it. They want to write the negatives, not the positives. And that's okay, because that's really been the way it's been with me anyway, I guess. Thank you very much. Thank you. We love you. Thank you.
When people say something false, I attack those people, because the news gets away with murder, the news media. They go after people, and I watch it, and I'm not just talking about names. The difference between me and other people is I'll attack back.
Well, I don't think I would be, but let's talk about what we talked about yesterday. Back to the negative.
Back to the. You know what? Do this interview with somebody else.
Well, we talked about this yesterday on the phone. This is exactly what we talked about.
Do the interview with somebody else. Really. Yeah, you don't need this. Do it with somebody else. And have a good time. Because frankly, you're a very negative guy, and I think it's very unfair reporting. Good luck.
I disagree with you. Sorry you feel that way. There's nothing that we didn't discuss on the phone, Donald.
If Trump's paranoia had turned back on himself, it gave him the strength to fight back and believe he'd win through. In truth, the scale of his debt was so huge that the banks were in a tight spot. So there was still room to negotiate.
I learned that it's certainly not something you want to go through again. I also learned about loyalty. I mean, some people that I would have assumed would have been loyal to me weren't, and some people that I really didn't necessarily know if they were going to be loyal, they were very loyal. You really can't tell about loyalty until the chips are down. Well, my banks were professional. My banks were loyal. They stood by me, and I appreciated it. And, you know, and that's why they liked me, and they made a good decision.
No more yacht, no more plane. The time had come to balance the books, and his priority was offloading Ivana, who still stuck by him. He could no longer bear his wife, who had become the Queen of New York, while he was just the jester. Her chic ladies' lunches, her Slavic accent, her hairdos, the whole act of the perfect mother, it all made his skin crawl, right down to the way she still said she was in love with him.
Is there anything you wouldn't support your man in?
Oh, sure. Oh, sure. I wouldn't support him on a few things, but I wouldn't support if Donald would be running around and fooling around, you know, and that I couldn't live with. You know, I have a certain pride, and that I couldn't really go through, but otherwise I support him in anything.
So much for the ideal wife. What was needed was a release from the tension of the previous months with some serious partying. These enthusiastic young women did not take much convincing to join in the fun. That's kind of what they do. The moral of this gracious evening? When you're rich and famous, it's easy to grab girls by the pussy. Feminists would love it. As for Marla Maples, the dazzling ambassador of a plastic surgery company, she had much more artistic ambitions, running a risque show off Broadway. Trump found himself drawn to the role of patron of the arts and financed the production. The theatrical reviews may have been short, but a new soap opera was underway. Trump now no longer had to use the excuse of a business meeting to get away. He appeared openly in public with Marla, and Ivana was left to call her lawyer. Outside La Grenouille, the most famous French restaurant in Manhattan, hundreds of reporters and paparazzi waited for Ivana, who had planned a discreet little brunch between girlfriends. Except someone had tipped off the press. The scandal was huge, and public opinion came down in favor of the wronged wife. Ivana just had to follow the example of those mink-clad blondes who practice divorce and alimony like a sport. The divorce became official. Ivana kept the plaza. Donald looked delighted with the birth of little Tiffany, yes, just like the jewelers, Marla even more so. She holds on tight to her life insurance. You can never be too careful. The next season in the series held no great surprises. Exit Marla, maintenance for Tiffany. Along comes Melania, the beautiful Slovenian model. What is it with him and Eastern European girls? As it turns out, his new wife is lacking in neither class nor character, and Trump, a new father aged 60, seemed caught off guard by the new family setup.
Yeah, you will have lunch and then you go to school.
Now I'm gonna go.
Yeah, first you will have lunch and then you go to school.
So he's had 3 wives. He's never been close to any of them. He's never shared a bedroom with any of them. He essentially has lived apart from his wives, even within the marriages.
Mommy, can I bring this to school?
No.
He has led a very solitary, lonely life, and he has few, if any, friends. He really has very few people he can talk to, and so he is sort of desperate for those kinds of connections.
Washington always ignored Donald Trump, who was too mouthy and too corrupt, therefore dangerous. And yet, Trump had always taken an interest in Washington, at least when it coincided with his own interests.
When Donald Trump ran for president in the 2016 election, it was the 6th time, that is 6 times, that he had talked about running for president. So it wasn't a brand new idea.
But what did he really know about the Republican heritage of the Founding Fathers, Lincoln's message, and the values of democracy?
And he's never changed in any way. I was asking him about something he'd done in his 20s and how it had changed his life, and he said, no, you got me all wrong. He said, I haven't changed in any significant way since I was 7 years old. And he has that much insight into himself to realize that he really is unchanged.
What's more, one of Trump's strengths is his puerile affinity. He always feels at ease and happy around children.
And thank you for coming here. It's really nice. And enjoy your Christmas, and enjoy your Hanukkah, and enjoy everything. We'll have a good time. Go sing another song.
There's no brutal competition with children. Only the mysterious nostalgia for the childhood he never had.
He's never been ideologically conservative, that's for sure. He doesn't think ideologically, generally, so you can't connect him directly to a consistent ideological point of view.
For someone who always walked a fine line when it comes to legality, Trump is a fierce defender of law and order. When a female jogger was left for dead in Central Park, he made political capital out of the feelings of appalled New Yorkers. And when suspicion fell on a teen gang from Harlem, he called for the death sentence, backed up with ads in the press. The gang were given long sentences before being proven innocent of the charges.
He talked about the group were guilty, and he described them in rather harsh terms. And when they were proven innocent through DNA sampling, he still said that they were guilty and still used his intemperate terms. The kids up in Harlem were actually smeared by Trump.
Meanwhile, Trump shared the cheerful optimism of the Reagan couple and unabashedly cozied up to the victorious right wing they embodied. Nancy and Ronald were 2 interlopers from Hollywood who had mastered politics as spectacle. Image, glamour, celebrity. This was a cocktail that led to power. Even in a more vulgar version, it was bound to work.
Well, we can make some connections, I think, to Ronald Reagan. He was a leader who appealed to the average person, let's call them that. The truck driver in the Middle West, the hairdresser. They were called Reagan Democrats. I think Trump connects with that group.
Yet only Larry King took him seriously and gave him the opportunity to voice his opinions.
Japan is a money machine. Saudi Arabia is a money machine. Kuwait, these are money machines, the greatest ever created. Why aren't these countries, these wealthy money machines, paying us for the defense of their freedom and their nations? And these are the countries that in 24 hours they'd be wiped off the face of the earth if it weren't for America. It's ridiculous.
Meet the new governor of Minnesota, the surprise winner, wrestler Jesse Ventura. This athlete-cum-showman applied to politics the same rules as in his day job. Lots of play acting, saber rattling, and brutal smackdowns. Trump found this a fascinating lesson.
There's a long-standing American passion for the rogue, the renegade, the character, people who are coming to the political system from a very different walk of life and who are speaking truth to power.
Trump had a great deal in common with Jesse Ventura. The conspiracy of the elites against the ordinary guy, a raging desire to upend everything, the humiliation of being laughed at by Washington.
He doesn't care for the cold weather, so to get him here in Minnesota cold weather is a triumph indeed for us.
There's a big difference between creating wealth and being a member of the Lucky Sperm Club, which a number of different people that are right now running are. If people think that I'm running, we do great. If I do decide to do this, which I very well might, Jesse's support would be very important to me.
Trump was very tempted to be on a presidential ticket with his new friend. But given that Jesse was as shady as him, and outside of Minnesota, a pair of fairground monsters ran the risk of not getting further than the daytime talk shows.
I'm not going to be running. The party is, as you know, self-destructing. Jesse has left, and that's a problem. And so I will not be running.
Those options, in your opinion, do not include a run for the presidency or the vice presidency.
Right, this year. It may include something in the future, but at this point,
here we go with this
no.
flirtation again.
No,
okay,
well,
no?
I'm just saying that in a number of years, I might consider it.
Then Trump's parents died within a year of each other. Fred had Alzheimer's, while Mary Ann was gripped by a melancholy that swallowed up her remaining memories of life. Strangely, Donald never talks about them.
Donald Trump had spent half a century organizing his life and creating a character in public that was essentially a celebrity. He has always been addicted to his clippings, the articles about himself. He marks them up with a pen. He sends the comments back to the editor, back to the writer, whether they're good or bad comments. He's always craved the respect of the New York Times, and he's always felt that he never got that respect. So he's always been at once a great critic of the Times and wanting desperately to please the Times and get on its good side.
Since he was stuck on the gossip pages, why not go all the way? There was always Playboy and its pliable playmates. This was not a hard step for Trump. He was a fan of Hugh Hefner, who had made a fortune with his little bunny and his big girls in a state of undress. Overall, it was even more effective than the big newspapers, which looked down on him.
And then along came this television program, The Apprentice, that put him into American living rooms, made him the big boss, the guy at the conference room, the man with this fancy apartment, with planes, with helicopters with his name on them, practically Louis XIV figure of enormous position and luxury and opulence and power.
Trump had gone bust several times, but in the mind of the average American, that made him the kind of businessman who was always ready to start over. The format for The Apprentice involved shutting up 20 ambitious young wannabe entrepreneurs in Trump Tower, and the boss, Donald, decides which one is the killer worthy to work alongside him.
And the show was very popular. Everyone knows watching it that it's not really real, but after about a minute and a half, everybody forgets that and thinks that it is real, that this is a real conference room, that this is really happening, that this is just real life.
The show was a huge hit across the whole of the United States. In schoolyards and in the workplace, people mimicked Trump's catchphrase, "You're fired." Trump had pulled it off. He had become the big bad boss who keeps everyone entertained, the man they love to hate.
Trump, with his finger of God, you know, you're fired, was very commanding and very dramatic. And I think this really elevated his stature to being somebody who could just take charge of the country and really get rid of all the mess and figure out who are the good people. He's going to sit in the White House in the Oval Office, and it's going to be the same thing. He'll know what to do.
But Trump was approaching 70. The clock was ticking. The Apprentice had conferred a miraculous impunity on him. There was no time to waste.
As he said in one of his rare moments of self-insight, he could go out on Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and it wouldn't affect Americans in any way.
The hour of vengeance had come. Trump was going to rid those who had lost out on the American dream of their persecutors. The Clintons, who made out they were friends and who were always condescending while profiting from power to get rich. Barack Obama, Black, African, and Muslim, who pandered to lefty intellectuals. Did Trump believe the rhetoric he spouted? It makes no difference.
It isn't necessary to be a politician to become president, and it isn't necessary to have come from the intellectual elite to become a president.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am officially running for President of the United States, and we are going to make our country great again.
Like the evil clown on the trail of Batman, who haunts the imagination of an innocent America, would Trump's Joker win the keys to the White House? Surely this was just another priceless farce from Donald. Yet there was a Joker, ready to overturn the table, grinning in triumph. What's the point of always making the same mistake? Donald Trump did not come out of nowhere. He goes a long way back in the history of the United States. He is well aware of this, and he made it work to his advantage. As if perhaps also remembering that, as a child, he was denied the privilege of those first happy years, instead being trained to fight, to hit, and to kill in order to win.